All right, and welcome back. We are live from the 2012 Reebok CrossFit Games at the Home Depot Center in Carson, California, and we are gearing up for the final heat of events 1 and 2. My name is Joe Westerland. Here with me, Thomas Cox. And Tom, it has been very exciting so far. Going to be interesting to see here if teams from this heat can break into the top 3. So far, 5 of the 6 fastest times between the two events have come out of the first heat.
Exactly. Here we have the fourth heat, and here's the thing. We've got some studs in this fourth heat. We've got the 2011 champion of CrossFit New England. Team A is in this last heat, followed by SPC CrossFit in this last heat, who right now, Joe, after the regionals, is #1 in the world. With Joe Weigel on that team. Joe Weigel was a competitor last year.
Absolutely, and I had the honor of doing the Central East broadcast and watching SPC CrossFit. They were a dominating force. Now you mentioned we have our eyes on CrossFit New England.
Always.
We have our eyes on SPC CrossFit. And something interesting here, CrossFit Dallas Central, their head coach and affiliate owner, Spencer Nix, is a member of the U.S. Bobsled team. Now, our second event here is somewhat of a hybrid bobsled that's being pushed on grass, but I bet Spencer has some interesting tips for his team. So that's another one that we can watch as well. Not just because their coach is on the bobsled team, but you and I saw that team yesterday. They have some big boys.
And it's interesting, the theory of how to push that sled. You know, what's the way to push that sled? And here we have Invictus, Team Invictus right now, Ayo Ansi leading off the run. For CrossFit New England, we have Heather Bergeron leading off right now for CrossFit New England, former individual competition competitor.
And what you're looking at right now is event number 1. It is a 6 by 415 meter sprint relay. So we have 3 women and 3 men to a team. The ladies will run the first 3 legs of the event. The exchanges are not a baton like you'd see in track and field. These team members are slapping hands. That is the indication that the next leg can begin. The men run the last 3 legs of the event. This is event number 1, worth 100 points. Now, they will immediately go into event number 2, which we were talking about before, the bobsled event, which is worth another 100 points.
The thing to remember, Joe, is there's very quick turnaround. 2-3 minutes between the 400-meter sprint and the big bob. As you can see, this first event right here, they're slow. They're coming around this thing slow. And SPC CrossFit is in first place right now. And running for SPC CrossFit is Sam, a former gymnast at Kent State.
And strategy's been the word of the day, well, really the word of the weekend, every weekend when it comes down to the team competition. But you know, the question is, how many of these athletes are experienced at running this all-out 400-meter dashes with? It's safe to say that many of them, the training that they do that includes 400-meter runs is done at a 75 to 80% top speed. Here, they know they only have 1 leg, with the little wrinkle being that they do have to keep in the back of their head that they're moving on to the bobsled.
You're exactly right. One shot Charlie right here with his 415-meter run, and then they pass it off to their teammate. Like you said, something to think about is that they've got to push that sled 100 yards and then pull it 100 yards after that. We got a good pace going right here on the 400. The ladies are leading off the 400 in every heat of this event, and here we're fixing to have Taylor Richards-Lindsay from Hacks Pack just tagged and taking off for a Hacks Pack team.
And so much strategy involved here. You have to consider what leg are you running, which determines how much rest you get before moving on to event number 2. You could go out very fast, getting a good lead for your team, but keeping in mind, how is that run going to affect your legs and your lungs for the big bob event?
The first person that runs this, the first leg of this sprint relay is going to have about 8 minutes of rest. The last person, Joe, is going to have about 2 minutes rest. Something to think about where you place your teammates. In an individual competition, it's about getting the work done, getting it done fast. Here it's strategy. Strategy, strategy, strategy is the name of this game. Well, who is going to go where? Who is going to do what?
Again, we have the men that are going to be running the 4th, 5th, and 6th legs of this relay. The ladies started first, and we're going to see the men take off in just a second, running the final 3 legs of this event.
And that's Tommy Hackenbruck for Youth CrossFit, who's the first male tagged. Tommy Hackenbruck is a former games athlete, individual competitor.
And we've seen that become more of a theme over the last couple of years. Many former dominating individual competitors moving into the team competition to help their gyms out. And some of them, as you mentioned before, Joe Weigel competed individually in the regional.
Right.
And now
finished 6th in the Central East region.
Yeah, and that's very good. Now he's competing on his team. So that really draws a lot of interest from the fans watching their once favorite individual competitors move into the team competition.
Right, Hackenbruck is leading right now with, like we said, Tommy Hackenbruck is rolling down that track right now. Tommy's a former linebacker in college, Division I athlete in college, and a very, very stellar athlete, a very stellar CrossFit athlete too. So Hackenbruck's got 2 college athletes. Taylor Richards Lindsay played for the Utah State basketball team. So we've got some very, very experienced Division I college athletes on the Hackenbruck team.
And U CrossFit right now has what looks to be a secure lead at this point.
That's Adrian Conway right there for Hackenbruck, running very, very, very good form. Looks like he's done some running before in the past. He played safety at Weber State, so we got another former college football player on the Hackenbruck team.
And the final legs, the last 2 legs of this relay, they have a daunting task ahead of them, just as you spoke to before, a very minimal rest before going to that sled. That has to play into the strategy of how you close out that 400. Is it a better idea to coast for that last leg, giving yourself some recovery so you can contribute to your team, or do you try to sprint home trying to secure the fastest time for your team in that event?
Adrian just tagged for Hackenbruck, just tagged Michael. Michael's known on the Hackenbruck team as the little guy. Not a very, very powerful athlete, very, very good at gymnastics, and a very, very good runner. I think that's probably why he's last, Joe.
And as we talked before, multiple strategies here, not just where do you put your athletes based off of their speed and their strength at running the event, but their recovery abilities. One thing that is you find when we train in CrossFit is not only is there a demand of strength and conditioning, endurance, and coordination, but recovery ability. And that's into a weekend like this where we're competing all weekend long, that's huge.
And I'll say this, from being a former college football player myself, Tommy Hackenbruck, a linebacker in college, is probably not used to run 415 yards. That's probably why he went first.
And unofficially, Hackenbruck has come across the finish line in a time of 6 minutes and 27 seconds. That would put them into first place. That would be our new leader for event number 1, beating CrossFit Jenks with the previous fastest time of 6 minutes and 31 seconds.
So what this does, Joe, is this puts Hackenbruck, gives them 100 points for event 1. 100 points, that's a big deal. 100 points for event 1, and we've got about a 2 or 3 minute rest. Then we're going to the Big Bob. Now we'll see how this affects them. They go out, they finish first. How are they going to perform on the Big Bob? Are their legs so shot? Is the butt lock, as we said earlier, moved in on their back of their legs between their hamstrings and their glutes? Is it locked in so much that they can't perform? Tommy Hackenbruck pumping up his cleats, getting ready to go on the big bobsled. Interesting thought here of how to attack this sled. Where do you put your males? Where do you put your females? Do you put your hands on the sled? Do you do it like a back squat? You know, nobody's practiced this thing before, so we don't really have a good idea about that.
I was talking earlier with the coach from CrossFit Dallas Central, again, the owner of their gym, a member of the U.S. Bobsled team. They said they're going to put their two big boys in the back of the sled, and we'll see how that strategy plays out in just a few minutes here.
Right. And the top three on the sprint in the event heat 4 was Hackenbruck and CrossFit Invictus, who is a cog in the wheel of top contenders every year at the CrossFit Games. And then CrossFit Platinum all the way from Africa. All the way from Africa, all the way to California to compete in the CrossFit Games. That's an awesome, awesome thing. That shows you how far this sport has come from 6 years ago competing in Aromas on dirt all the way to the Home Depot Center in 2012.
Absolutely.
Just 6 short years.
And you mentioned a second ago Invictus. They're a presence every year as a threat to win the title. And I'll tell you what is also a presence, their sea of green, their fan following seems every year to also be the best. You look into the stands and you just see the sea of green t-shirts, tremendous support from their gym, which is a staple in the CrossFit community. The support that these teams get from the people that they train with every day at their gyms is just tremendous.
It's astounding. As you can see, a lot of these teams have opted for cleats on this grass field to push this sled, which, with a wet field, Joe, is probably a really, really good idea. Something to note here, we've got CrossFit New England, who is last 2011's Affiliate Cup champion and 7th in this heat. We're fixing to start the Big Bob in just a second, Joe, and this event right here has been proved to be a bear for these teams. They start out really quick, then all of a sudden they get to about 50 or 60 yards. I've seen some teams just stop right in the middle because their quads and their hamstrings are just so taxed. So they've got about 2 or 3 minutes of rest after that 400, and then they're rip ready and ready to go.
And I think for viewers that have never pushed a sled before, pulled a sled, pushed a prowler, when these athletes take off, it's not going to look like they're moving very fast, but don't be fooled. They are going to be breathing very, very heavy. It is quite a deceiving tool. All sleds are, and so I have to believe that Big Bob here is no exception to that. And here we go. And we are off. If you're just joining us, you are looking at the final heat of event number 2, which is being executed immediately after event number 1 at the 2012 Reebok CrossFit Games team competition. We are on the track and football field in Carson, California at the Home Depot Center, and these athletes are grinding through the turf trying to push Big Bob, which weighs approximately 750 pounds, down the football field 100 yards. Then they'll reestablish, hook ropes to the sled, and pull it back another 100 yards. This event is worth 100 points. Right? Event number 1 was also worth 100 points.
CrossFit Dallas Central, whose owner is a former bobsled coach. Is that right, Joe?
Actually, he's currently an alternate for the U.S. bobsled team right now, so definitely has some strategy for his team. This isn't a bobsled, but there are some resemblances.
There's no doubt. CrossFit Dallas Central is the first one to cross the line, followed by CrossFit New England, Team A. So what they can do now is they're throwing the weights off of the sled and then hooking ropes to the sled to pull the sled. So there's a push, then a pull. As you can see, Joe, these guys aren't rushing to hook this thing up. They're trying to recover.
Yeah, it's almost definitely a wise decision. There's no rush into getting into the pull for multiple reasons. Number one, they need to recover, and they know they've got many, many events ahead of them left for the rest of the day. And then the obvious one that we're probably not mentioning, they're just dog tired right now.
And there's SPC, who's currently #1 in the world right now, just crossing the finish line for the push on the Big Bob workout. And CrossFit Greensboro is leading right now. Them and Dallas Central are right there together.
Dallas Central has some very big men on their team. That has to help as everyone fatigues just the sheer weight that they can put into that sled as they drag it across the field now.
Don Walker on CrossFit Dallas Central is the brother of a competitor on CrossFit Maximus's team. So like we talked about earlier, we got a little bit of a sibling rivalry going on here. The CrossFit Dallas Central's in first right now with CrossFit New England in second.
Well, right now, our fastest time came out of heat number 1. It was TJ's gym with a time of 3 minutes and 15 seconds. SoCal, second place, 3 minutes and 31 seconds. And the current third fastest time, Diablo, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. We're going to see if any of those times fall right now. We did see a new leader take over in the sprint relay.
As you can see, these teams are fatiguing. They're crawling on the ground, Joe. Crawling on the ground, trying to get traction any way they can. And it looks like CrossFit Dallas Central is running away with this thing. Look at the fight in those guys right there, Joe.
Absolutely. And up to the very end, you'd think you'd hurry across that line wanting to be done, but they're so tired that it's just inches at a time.
There's no hurrying right here, Joe.
And they are going to be spent when they cross the finish line.
3:52 for CrossFit Dallas Central. 3:52 is their unofficial time.
And 3:52 would be a fast enough time to move them into third place overall in the Big Bob event. Again, with the second place time being 3 minutes and 31 seconds, and TJ's gym still holding that top time, 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
You got a tie for SPC and Invictus for spot number 2. CrossFit Atlanta's moving in there. CrossFit Atlanta, who has got a former Games competitor on their team in Leah Pulaski. Very, very, very well-rounded athlete with Leah Pulaski, and Jessica Denny, who competed last year for Team World Camp, is now competing this year on CrossFit Atlanta.
The teams remaining, CrossFit New England right now is fighting for 5th place.
It's a battle for number 2 right now, Joe. You've got Invictus, SPC CrossFit, and CrossFit Atlanta all in a wad right there together. You see the girls from SPC CrossFit just pulling it any way they can. And it looks like CrossFit Invictus is going to be second. They've got about 5 more feet to go for number 2. CrossFit Invictus is in second place. CrossFit Invictus from Southern California. Stellar performance by those guys. And again, CrossFit Invictus is always a constant at the CrossFit Games Affiliate Cup.
SPC CrossFit moving across the finish line right now, the dominating force coming out of the regional competition.
CrossFit, it will be number 3. We've got CrossFit Dallas Central is your number 1 for event 2. Invictus is your number 2. And
so rounding out the top 3, we have CrossFit Dallas Central, CrossFit, SPC CrossFit, and CrossFit Invictus for the top 3. We've still got some teams on the grass right now, pushing that sled, trying to get this thing done. Here's the thing, just because you don't win this heat doesn't mean the points don't matter. You've got to get as many points as possible. You're competing against the teams in Heat 1 and Heat 2 also, Joe, so they've got to understand that. Like you said earlier, every second counts in the sport of CrossFit. The sport of fitness, excuse me.
Yeah, a lot of competition left over the weekend. Points matter. Just because you finish in the middle of the pack doesn't mean that immediately you can't bounce back later on in the day in events 3 and 4 and move yourself back to the top of the pack. So first place gets 100 points, and then it goes down 5 points from there. Second place receives 95 points. Third place receives 90. 4th 85, 5th 80, 6th 75, and then from there it goes down 2 points at a time. So really, again, if you finish in the middle of the pack, there's only 2-point differences between those teams. Plenty of things can happen if you don't do well on these first two.
We've still got some teams out there pushing to get this thing done. The official times we have right now is CrossFit Dallas Central in first, SPC CrossFit in second, CrossFit Greensboro in third, Team Tyrannus in fourth, and CrossFit Atlanta in fifth. We've still got some teams out there that are struggling to get this thing done. Joe, these guys are smoked right now.
Yeah, for the viewers that are watching, first of all, running, which is close to a quarter mile, 415 meters, all out. Right? The feeling in the body, the legs lock up, your heart rate's about as high as it can ever get, and then just as you think you're going to recover, you move on to the sled. If nobody knows what that feels like, if you've ever pushed a stalled car out of the middle of the road, right? Now imagine doing that on grass, all right, for 100 yards, and then you have to turn around and pull it another 100 yards. Just complete exhaustion seen on the faces of these athletes as they cross the finish line.
You can still hear the cheers from the crowd, Joe, from the teams that are finishing first and the teams that are finishing last. And again, I talked about it earlier. That's what I love about this sport. You'll never hear a boo in the CrossFit community, I don't think, Joe. And that's something that is unlike any sport in the world, I would say. You're not going to hear a boo. You're not going to hear teams boo another team. Teams want to see others succeed. Now, they want to win. There's no question about that. But teams want to see success.
Absolutely. The only thing preventing teams from cheering on other teams at this point is just the sheer exhaustion from the two events that they just did.
So let's review what we've had. We started out with every member of every team running 415 meters. The women led that thing off, 415 meters by each lady. They would tag the next lady and go from there. There you see a member of SPC CrossFit right there on the front. How do you like the neon colors that all the competitors are wearing, Joe? What do you think about that?
Well, it's definitely easy to distinguish who the teams are because it is a melee out there. And there's a look at Tommy Hackenbruck, former Division I football player, but he's lost some weight, allowing him to move a little bit faster around that track. You know from our playing days that the heavier body weight doesn't help when it comes to running quarter mile.
It's a good thing when you're playing linebacker, not very good when you're doing CrossFit. So after these teams did the 415-meter sprint, what they do is they move directly to the big bob with about 2 minutes in between, and the sheer exhaustion on their legs from the push then the pull is, sitting up in the booth, I can't describe it. The blood pools in your legs, and you just have a hard time taking a step right there, Joe.
Absolutely. So we're just finishing heat number 2, event number 1 and 2 of the beginning of our team competition here at the CrossFit Games. We still have 2 more to go today, and then several more events over the course of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday.